Hey, Kathleen, how are you?
Good morning. It's been a while.
Yeah. What's happening on your end? It's good seeing you.
Yeah, well, busyness actually,
Hmm,
jammed up schedule, but you know what? It's interesting people and interesting times, so that's all good.
interesting. I've got hold on, I'm gonna share something with you if I remember the right link here. Hold on. I've got someone asked to meet with me who's in the um housing manufacturing.
Ooh, okay.
What's the company? Jack, that's it. Okay, give me a second to find the website.
Yeah, I've just teed up a meeting with Build Canada as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
On
which
what?
I think is useful because now that's just one part of the story, but it's worthy.
Okay. Yeah. What's the context for the meet?
Just to understand more about their Build Canada program.
Okay.
Because there's too much confusion out there, and I just wanted to hear it from the horse's mouth, but what their particular focus is, which is a good one, but it doesn't cover the whole gambit. So anyway, I just wanted to connect with those folks and cheer them on.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I just think adding more layers is, I understand having a champion that works with the existing organizations, but adding in extra layers further fractures what's already overly siloed. So
Yeah, it's really interesting. I'm finding that, well, probably I too suffer from this, but the differentiation between levels of government and responsibilities. And it's confusing because it keeps changing, number one. And secondly, people are busy. They don't have time to dive into all of this detail, right? So,
no, it's
but
usually the bigger players that do and have the deep pockets and this to be able to hire the staff or get somebody to focus on this. It's
oh yeah, for
kind of
sure. But
neglected.
it's important to know this because I mean you want to focus your energy where you can actually leverage something, make a difference. But if you're if you're heading down the wrong trail, that's just wasted time and energy, right? So
That's it. And it always
at
comes
any
down
rate,
to my holy trinity for results, which is who's got ultimate accountability, what
yeah,
does success look like, and what are the incentives,
yeah.
and how are they aligning all the stakeholders to make it happen, which is just it's more ideas and some dedicated funding that gets wasted.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, time is of the essence in most things, quite frankly. And if you're not able to see the path forward, you're going to be tripping over all of this stuff, wasting time, energy, and money, and not really achieving what it is you set out to. So, yeah, th this information is important, but I've also just by happenstance, how did this happen? I don't know, but bumped into some folks who are really good thinkers and are talking about far more than just housing, which connect the dots, man, because it is more than just housing, right?
Yes,
So I'm very, very intrigued with the what I'm seeing as a level of interest out there to make positive change and to even structure ways to do that. So very interesting.
very interesting. And where are you seeing that? And
Well, you know what I spend a lot of time reading. And actually on Substack. So I'm connecting with someone on Substack that writes about this, who's
okay,
actually in New Brunswick. And but I think we have common backgrounds to begin with. But I really like the way she's thinking in terms of how to address this, right? So.
Okay. And address specifically the housing crisis or mobilizing industry to provide supply.
How people can get together and jointly solve these things. That's actually her focus, which is brilliant because everyone has an expertise in a certain area. Like she sounds to me like the quintessential generalist, quite frankly.
Hey.
But that's important because connecting all these dots is critical, right? Now, actually, being the conductor of the orchestra that connects all of these dots, plays all the music is really
Yes.
critical. So,
Yeah. And that's having that player, whether it's Build Canada or the deputy, one of the deputies from ESDC, who's that lead that can actually orchestrate it and mobilize and seek policy legislative changes from cabinet and to facilitate it, because that's what I did in government, was be
yeah,
that champion to understand after significant amounts of consultations to what's holding you back. Oh, what's holding you back? Oh, you guys aren't talking together. Oh, it's because of this. Okay, well then let's take this to cabinet and seek changes, new authorities, conditional authorities, which I think is the most powerful thing, which people don't do, is we don't have all the answers, dear ministers. This is what I'm proposing, and I'll report back to you on a quarterly basis to manage the risk and to show how it's working. And here are the metrics that will be, or the KPIs that will be tracking. And it worked.
well, you're so right. That's why it takes a team. Like this idea that there's a hero. No, it takes a team and it takes a very communicative team
Yes.
that works together to actually address all these things and see all these different interconnections because
Mhm.
one person can't. So I have to say that who, oh, it must be in the blood or something, but I'm connecting with some local politicians because you know what I'm seeing that there's a gap. So we
Yes.
have to communicate how to fix that, right? So
Yeah. Yeah. And really then to get for the politicians to pay attention to actually champion anything, they need the carrot for them is an announceable. So how can you support
yeah,
them and provide things on a silver platter so that they can get in front of a camera and say, this is what I'm doing for my constituents and the party I belong to. And
right.
it's that's where you connect the dots in the background and then bring it to them to champion in the house.
I also want to suggest some communication tactics that they might look at using because I'm not certain that the positive messages are not getting through. Right? So, and you can't fault citizens for being a little negative these days. So, if we can find positives in what they're doing and allow folks to understand that unfortunately things don't happen overnight. Like they're really, it takes time. Now, we probably should have started this 10 years ago, but I mean, who knew?
Yeah, and I shared in the chat that morning, Peter, or afternoon now that you're in our time zone, center of the universe. Um, we're talking about Build Canada. Like Kathleen's got a meeting coming up with
Right.
them, and we're talking about housing. And I put it in the chat, Kathleen, but I'll put it in again in case Peter missed it. The company called Cordax that reached
Ooh,
out to me and it
I got it here. Yep. No, I got it.
okay.
I
And
got it.
Kathleen, if you want to herd people to this group and we can work through what it takes to be able to get results for housing, because it is the need is a required orchestration of how to bring people to the table and what each of them want, because it's always incentives and what's driving them to be able
yeah.
to get the results and be able to drive this forward, and how to position those politicians that you have relationships with to be able to support the mission, because if they'll always go or lean into whatever is the lowest hanging fruit and where they can get that announceable. And conversations I've had with central agencies in the last month
Well, yeah,
has been around a significant focus on immediate results and messaging around benefits to the middle class. And this government, without a majority, really needs to provide some wins before the budget, or
yeah, totally.
after, to show that this is what we have planned and are putting in place.
Well, and that's why I think a bit of focus on the messaging is really important because, again, I mean, there's a huge amount of things that need to get accomplished in a short period of time. It's the age we unfortunately live in. So the more that we can communicate properly on that, I think the more people can start to see what that looks like and how they might be involved in that too. So
Yeah, and a big piece that I'm not hearing is about capacity building and not identifying or not understanding the major hole that's going to be left imminently with the exodus of or the lack of replacements of tradespeople and
right.
the
That's huge.
complications of apprenticeships in, say, for example, Ontario. It's harder to get an apprenticeship with a company or it's a senior tradesperson to for those people to actually get their ticket. So
Well, interesting too. Like I'm just hearing on the news. I'm originally from Manitoba, so I stay in touch with them. But all of the climate initiated disasters going on in northern Manitoba, and the latest is the power got cut off to this village and they froze everything. And then the ongoing
I did read about that.
yeah, the ongoing concern with safe drinking water and so on. What I know about working in Manitoba and including with Indigenous folks is that they need to start a trades training program because they get new facilities and no one looks after them, including housing, because they don't have plumbers, electricians, and carpenters. So so I want to encourage the Manitoba government. I might just call Wob Canoe and say, hey, man, get this started because it would be good for Assiniboine College. It'd be good for Red River. It would be
Yes.
good for the universities. It would be good for all of the people to do this, right? So, like, these are not huge decisions. Like, this connect the dots, man. Connect the dots. So, anyway, I'm getting a
Yeah,
bit political. It was not my intention, but that's where decisions are made, so you got to influence it.
that's it. It's everything at the end of the day comes down to some level of political involvement, and
Yeah,
whether it's at the municipal level, whether it's provincial or federal, and it's understanding what the existing rules are that people are playing within that prevents the results we're achieving, and being able to look at that for job creation and what is draining money. And I've seen it. I manage assets on the Red River, so I've spent a lot of time in Manitoba,
right.
specifically around Winnipeg and Selkirk, and understanding the dynamics. It just seems really short-sighted, especially
Yeah,
the flow of the Red River and the recurring challenges for these indigenous communities of getting flooded, having to be removed. Kids are out of school. They fill up hotels in Manitoba for a couple of months every spring. Housing has to get fixed in the same place. There's no other mitigation measures or any better resilient housing or even raising the housing, say, on stilts. It's it's ludicrous to me. And then you've got kids out of school. It's just a perpetual downward spiral that's not helping anybody. And then
yeah,
looking at the work that gets done and the contract awards that go to the indigenous companies that don't have the capacity or even the skills to implement the work, do poor work, and don't even have the right expertise to build what needs to get done. And so it's
Yeah, it was interesting. Back in the day, there was a push. Oh, this is probably in the 80s. There was a federal push to give Indigenous companies priority,
yes.
which is fine. But you're right, they didn't have the capability. So there was also, and I'm talking construction here, but there was also smaller construction companies that actually hired some Indigenous people to take advantage of two things. A, accessed contracts, but B, training up Indigenous folks so that they could actually, you know, build build an industry that they could participate in. So I don't know if that still goes on, but these programs have interesting insight. They just don't have good follow-up, I don't think. So,
Well, and that's it is the accountability afterwards. Where's the money going? What were
yeah.
the results? And that was a big piece of what Harper had put in place was legislation for transparency where Indigenous communities or recipients of grants or contributions had to report openly on where the money was being used. But then Trudeau ended that. And I don't even think he ended the legislation. He just said we will not be enforcing the reporting. And so
Hmm.
we have 32 last year's $32 billion of funding that went to Indigenous um, recipients that have zero accountability. That's more than our defense budget. It's mind blowing. And
Yeah.
what's happening is a lack of results and continued funding requirements to support these communities that just
Well, I mean, it's pretty basic, you know. You have to track things and you have to see what's
yeah.
going on because you won't know
Measurement,
where you are.
measurement drives behavior. It doesn't matter what age, how big your group is. It's
Yeah.
fundamental.
So I was telling you about this person that I've been interacting with on Substack. Um, I'm trying to set up a conversation with her and sometimes next week. But I think I want to introduce her to you guys because you're kind of working on similar things. And I think that there would be some good synergy happening to build progress, actually.
And yeah, ultimately, what
Or,
we're doing
yeah,
is to support the economic sovereignty of Canada and to help companies get the results they,
right.
they need and government.
Well, she focuses so far on she's incredibly brilliant. What she knows about everything going on is quite impressive. Her focus is actually starting, well, not starting, but engaging people at the kitchen table, so that firstly that they understand um, what's going on, how they can influence, contribute, build, so on. And I think that's critical because it speaks to scale as well. Start small, but in many places and build momentum in that way.
Mhm.
At any rate, I have to talk to her first.
And I see that as the only, I think our system and government is so broken that there's no way to fix it from the inside, especially with the link to corporate influence and industry
Mm,
influence and how politicians get to office. And the
yeah.
only way to create the change is to empower the smaller players and
Yes.
influence it with messaging and numbers for what's needed and desired, and the votes for the party that has the strongest platform that supports them, or at least at the local level, influencing getting your member of parliament and your MLA or MPP on board to support what's needed in the community. It's really a focus on localized benefits because that's where we've lost the plot.
Well, and influence, localized influence as well.
Yes,
Well,
yes.
so, and but yeah, you're right. I probably mentioned this before. I follow probably four or five different economists, and they are, you know, in different countries,
Okay.
but we live in a global economy, so it's important to understand what the hell's going on. And you know what? Most people don't understand that. I get it. I studied economics. It's complex, and how things work is complex, and people are just trying to, put food on the table day to day. So not understanding why it's so difficult. But yeah, this country has been absolutely consumed by big business. And that's part of the economic system that's allowed that to happen. Too many monopolies,
Yes.
especially, well, monopolies. There's too many for sure, but especially in the food industry. So that's one of the conversations I've been having with this woman in New Brunswick is, the cost of food, the fact that people who produce the food can't even afford the food they produce. It's insane. So,
It is, and that's something I've become really, just to take a step back on economics. That's my background is engineering and economics, and I
yeah, all right.
fell in love with economics because of how it opened my mind and I understood all the pieces. And something I do normally every December, and I'm behind, is do this. Let's see if I can pull up an image as I explain things. Um,
I'm going to flip you the Substack and YouTube for this economist and his buddy that I follow. He's I think they're both Aussies, but they're irreverent and I love it. But he absolutely knows how economics works, and he's not a mainstream economics guy because he said that's why we're in trouble. But he swears a
um,
lot. I kind of like that.
yeah. And my computer's playing games with me. I've lost the, where can I pull it up? Anyway, all this to say I'll pull it up later and I'll share it. But I made a post about it before. Is I am a big fan of the ISLM model, although the
Okay.
economists will feel that it's too rudimentary. But for me, it gives me a broad forecast. So I'll consider all the inputs and I'm making my list. And I do this giant analysis and map out how things will play out for the next year, short, medium, long term.
Okay.
But really, this helped me land that near zero variance on my capital budget because of how I mapped it out. So some of the key things I'm mapping out this weekend or within the next week is the change in the US of the reserve bank ratio,
Ooh,
getting
yeah.
additional liquidity, bond yields, interest rates, and go into the other macro factors like unemployment, looking at foreign GDP change and doing some sensitivity analysis around what I think the US is doing to manipulate their dollar and especially oil. I really think that there is a move to flood the market with increased oil supply to cheapen the onshoring of manufacturing and movement of goods across the country to allow more affordability. So this model has served me so well over the years, and it's a fun exercise. And I was going to work out with my son because I've shared this with him before, and he's 18 and in his first year of university,
Cool.
and just being able to,
Get him interested.
yeah, exactly. And he's highly analytical as well, so it's good. My daughter's eyes just cross, and it's like, are we done yet? She's not interested at all.
Well, everyone has different interests.
Of course, of course. But coming back to maybe I can just try to pull it up on my computer. It's not.
So tomorrow, not to divert here because it's connected, but tomorrow I'm having a conversation with, geez, about, I don't know, 4 or 5 people on data centers.
Oh,
And we're looking at it from the physical aspect because we're all in the building industry. And so we're definitely looking at size. We're looking at the electricity consumption. We're looking at the water consumption. And we're absolutely discussing risk and resilience. So it's a conversation I've been trying to arrange for months now. But things just keep changing. So this is part of our dance with change discussion, and I think we're going to be having more than one because things are changing right now. To your point, there is an economic bubble, and there's been lots of people speculating the burst on this whole AI business model. So this, I think is going to be very interesting. I'm fascinated by this, and I've been following it for some time, and I'm pleased to see others have as well. So I think the conversation is going to be very interesting.
That is a really interesting conversation, especially if you break down the economic growth for the last year in the US. It was all around data centers. It is
Yeah.
the economic driver right now, and we haven't. I'm waiting to feel, and this is part of the exercise, is the unemployment forecasts and
Well,
being able to understand how that's going to shift things in a big way.
yeah, if you look at the market, and I know you do, you see that the market is really driven right now by technology. That's so troublesome because it's like a monopoly, and that just increases risk because if something fails there, then the entire thing crashes.
Yeah, I agree that there's been too much hype around them, and the market is continues to climb. I've been waiting for a correction since late September, and
Right.
just watching the market, trying to understand it. And right now, for the last 2 weeks, it's going sideways. But what is that factor that's going to shift it? But then at the same time, the military industrial complex, and this is such a big piece that I don't think receives the attention it deserves, is having the majority of the West increase their defense spending to
Mm.
over the next 9 years to reach 5% of GDP is a huge, huge driver. That's a very large investment. Although, what else gives? How are we becoming more productive to afford this? And
Well,
what else gives?
I think that that's the focus right now of Canada for sure, and likely the other NATO countries. In the US, the focus is technology. A- and that's because of who's influencing power right now, right? So, no, it should be interesting. And well, my concern is actually that the US dollar is going to just tank and things are going to shift globally.
And I think Trump has a different idea in manipulating the dollar. So I think the focus isn't just on technology, but is on manufacturing.
Oh
I
yeah, yeah, yeah.
They need to rebuild that manufacturing base, and of course, as we've spoken about, the infrastructure to support it. So the buildings, the warehouses, everything else. So there's going to be a beautiful ripple effect from it. So I really see the Venezuela move as he's trying to entice the oil companies to invest and get the country back up to snuff. But to get that output increase, to disrupt OPEC and the East and the BRIC countries, and then to because if they're not trading oil under US dollars, that's a huge risk to the US. And
Oh
they're
yeah, yeah.
a toppling point for the downfall of a the commanding empire. So the British fell, the US is at that timeline now where they've decreased productivity at an individual level. All the bellwethers are there for it to start collapsing. So if he, which I think he will be able to do, is to increase domestic production and become self-reliant, which is this drive for all the minerals to be able to have that while disrupting the other parties. And I really think that there's a play with digital currencies to wipe out US debt. So there's a few pieces going on, and I think we'll start seeing that in the fall of 26. But what I'm really curious about is this green mark play because it's a disruption. And per NATO, an attack on one of our members is an attack on all members.
Yes.
which risks disrupting and collapsing NATO. But the US is so reliant on the military industrial complex that if NATO falls, countries will pull back on their commitment to reach 5% of GDP in spending. So it hurts him to mess with NATO. So I'm not sure about that, but I think that the dollar will remain strong if they're able to manipulate oil the way I see them doing so.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
The amount of foreign investment in U.S. debt is huge. It's
It is.
monstrous. The amount of power that has is, well, that's actually keeping that country financially afloat. So like that's a very tenuous thing to play with, but we live in interesting times for sure.
Okay, I'm trying to see if that image can share. And their trade balance is shifting as well. So they
Yes.
managed to have, I think they reported a surplus last 2 months ago for the first time with the latest data that came out last week. So that's impressive. The tariffs may be doing what he had intended. So
Well, I don't personally, I wouldn't look at trade, particularly with tariffs, in isolation of the cost of living in the US because it's really consumers there paying for those tariffs, right? So,
true, true. Um, why is it? Oh, here we go. It worked. And yeah, food. I wanted to talk about food. Um, so understanding one of my clients is a company that it's an agronomy and logistics company. So they now have exclusive rights over all throughput at the port of Johnstown, which is on the St. Lawrence, underutilized port. It was divested from Transport Canada in the early 2000s and has just unutilized. And they've been trying for 15 years to be able to have an arrangement with them to be able to increase throughput, which just happened 10 months ago.
hmm,
And they're called V6 Agronomy. If you Google them, you'll see information on them. But they understanding phosphates and crop input. So they have a specialized compound fertilizer that is cheaper and more effective. The CEO is an agronomist, and this is formulated to be able to provide the most absorption and no waste, no runoff. So less input, more output. And the understanding of phosphates blew my mind because phosphates are concentrated in certain areas in the world. Morocco
yeah,
has the greatest reserves, and all of that stuff comes into North America through New Orleans. So it comes up NOLA, Mississippi, and then gets dispersed into North America. So we don't have our own pathway, but through the Port of Johnstown, now we do. And just by having direct throughput, no conversion, no tariffs, the decrease in that single input into everything we eat is significant to be able to lower food costs. So just one nuance, one turn
yeah,
can change so much. And then just understanding that entire industry and the detail I now do is really interesting. Again, the monopolies or oligopes of the world and these one or two companies that have control of this vital input into growing food.
yeah.
It's fascinating.
Well, the other thing going on right now, and it has everything to do with a generational shift for sure, but farmland in Canada is being purchased by numbered companies and foreign investments because And this is classic, but so you've got a farm family, and it's actually the value of the land that the farmer intends for his retirement, their retirement. So, and their kids may or may not want to get into farming. So you have this it's economic, it's ownership and so on. But more and more, I mean, I see this in my husband's family that numbered companies are buying farmland, and they are then uh, hiring farmers as labor to actually do the work on a farm. So land ownership is transferring elsewhere. Big companies, numbered companies, foreign investment, and farmers are becoming the hired hands.
So we're going back to the French seigneurial system,
Yeah, exactly.
which
No, which
is
is really, really concerning because that's a huge assault on Canadian democracy, way of life, and so on, right? It's just, big companies are just eating stuff up. And so yeah, that's part of the concern going on right now too. So
that's and even I don't Trump. I'm not celebrating him, but I am celebrating some of his decisions. And he's put a stop, or is trying to put a stop to industrial or commercial or institutional buying of homes in the US.
oh God, that's been going on, yeah, ever since 2008. Yes,
2008. Yeah.
it's a problem.
Yeah. So that's the uh, an example picture I had. I'm not good at documenting my life at all, but somehow that was
Well, this looks very interesting.
from my forecasts for my capital programs back
Okay,
in my past life. And so I would forecast what's happening in the world. This is the ISLM model and all the key GDP factors. And so
right,
the capacity, like architectural and engineers and talent pool, and just be able to understand what are we facing, what contracts or supply arrangements do we need to put in place now, because we're losing people or we don't have internal capacity or the speed to hire, and just managing the risks. So I'd forecast this out, set up, get my teams to set up whatever was needed, bring in procurement, bring in the other
right.
stakeholders to be able to start creating the vehicles that we needed. And that's what facilitated the landing on target every year. So
Well, you know what? That this is useful for sure, and it's important. I don't think enough people do this to
nobody does
get
this.
big picture view. One of the things that I will be having a discussion with, and I'm glad this Carney government is focused on working with provinces to
Yes,
remove interprovincial trade barriers. Like found it absolutely insane that every little fiefdom has their own little rules about, and this affects professions, engineers, architects, doctors, nurses, everybody. Every profession has to go through a separate registration, a separate whatever, province to province to province, which is ridiculous, totally ridiculous.
it is. If we can't trade within our own borders.
Well, and then what happens? And so I'm just going to focus on the building industry because I know it better. But for instance, when engineers to work in different provinces need to register in as a separate entity in each province, firstly, it's costly and it takes time and it makes no sense. So then you get a company that starts to buy up small engineering firms in each province, right? So that they can avoid this because they already have a registered group of engineers in each province. So that breeds monopolies again. So you've got,
Like the Stantec and the WSP.
yes,
Yes,
Stantec was the one in my mind here.
that's yeah. That's I heard that.
But it's not just Stantec. I mean, they're they're doing that with both engineering and architecture, but it's so pathetic because it's really generating more cost for no value for clients who are wanting and needing to hire these experts. And why we don't have doctors and nurses in hospitals because of all of this ridiculousness,
Yeah,
including, the folks that we're able to attract from other countries. Well, they can't practice, even though, like, how many versions of a human body,
that's it.
come
It's
on. A
yeah,
doctor is a doctor. Get over it. Just, make it streamline it so that they can actually practice. It's just we are our own worst enemy, and it drives me nuts. So I'm glad that the feds are looking at this, but they have to. I mean, the provinces need to agree because there's only certain leverage that the feds have on this.
yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it is. And it's about following the money too and understanding. See, on the doctor front, what that means in terms of who wins, who's protected, what's the Canadian Medical Association saying, and how are they blocking out foreign doctors or making the hurdles big enough to enter? And then on the
Yeah.
housing side, it's the professional engineer associations of each province arguing that they want to maintain their little fiefdom
Well, it's true. It's
and
true.
argue, well, they have to be specialized in our building standards and our building code, which then brings us back to harmonizing the building code. So I think that has to be the starting point. If we're not looking at harmonizing the building code, we're wasting our time on any other discussions. Then you've
Well,
got the saying same standards across the country. So why do
yeah.
we have different standards throughout the country?
It's so interesting. I really enjoyed chatting with your dad because
Okay.
obviously we share a lot of ideas about this, but there is a national building code. Give me a break. Yes, there's about five different types of engineering, which makes sense that they're expert in certain things. But at the end of the day, an engineer is an engineer, an architect's an architect. And you're going to run into specific soils conditions and weather conditions and so on because it's Canada. So it will vary. But at the end of the day, no, the profession is a profession. But you're right. There's also this provincially, these professional associations go, oh, no, we don't want to give this up. Like, why? What? Because you have a national association already. So come on.
And I don't think the different associations like the National Electrician, I forgot what the name of it, or the Plumbing and Heating Association, which has so much power. When I learned about them and met with them 2 years ago on my mission to do what you're doing, and I just gave up because I'm like, this is hurting me for lack of traction and understanding the influence. Because plumbing and heating, this is your heating your homes and you're bringing water to people. The lobby power they have is so strong, but the lead doesn't understand how to, well, all of them, the CCA, the Canadian Construction Association, these trade associations to come together
Yeah.
to influence government because they're incentivized for whatever reasons to keep things as is because they have tremendous power and coming together. This could change very quickly. So maybe, and I'm thinking out loud, is how to incentivize them. But I've written, and I just don't know yet what to do with this. But I wrote it's a 32-page white paper on rebuilding our construction code system and harmonization.
Mm.
And I shared it with my dad, who went to the Canadian Code Center to meet with them to recommend some improvements and want to give this to them. I was like, I think your message is falling on deaf ears, and I just don't know.
Well, I got the sense from your dad that he was not impressed with the current group over at.
No, no, he's not. And it's the same, I guess, sentiment with all bureaucrats because no one's looking at how to do things better because they're not measured. Uh,
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I've actually spent a lot of time with Canadian Construction Association and the mechanical trades guys, um, and some of the electricians too. What I think needs to happen is that we have to find a way for them to be competitive but work together. Because right now, their competition is like that. It's counterproductive. And all they do is throw risk over the shoulder to the next trade behind them. So,
Yes.
what we were
Yes.
trying to do in lean is change that whole dynamic and bring in all of the key players, including key suppliers, to a project during the design phase, like right, so everyone participates, shared risk, shared reward. So that's what our focus is.
Okay, I think I'm going to go through my paper with a lens. But I want to ask you is what do you think can and should be done with this? And I'm happy to share it with you.
Well, yeah, flip it here. I'd be very interested to read it because this is an ongoing pursuit. Like I was instrumental, along with some really smart people, in starting the Lean Construction Association of Canada. And uh, and then leadership changed at Canadian Construction Association because they were a key player, obviously.
Yes.
And then they decided, no, we don't want you guys involved. We'll just take this. And then they buried it. And so it kind of killed the national organization.
Now the question is why? Why did they kill this? How is
You
this
know what? It struck me at the time, just a personality thing, just a control freak situation where, because the executive changed. They're elected, so they change whether annually or every couple of years, I'm not sure. But that changed, including um, their administration person, who was quite the character. So it was a headspace change. They went right back to vicious competition, I would suggest. So it really unfortunate. I mean, there's still the major companies like PwC Construction. I mean, they that's who I worked with the most actually, and they're international. They're very much lean. DPR, there's a number of large construction firms that are absolutely living lean, working lean.
right?
But it can't just be the contractor, can't just be the design team. It's got to be everybody. So I focus my attention on the owners because it's got to start there. Everyone can be lean, but on a project, if the owner doesn't put it into the contract, it
Right.
doesn't happen. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And that's that single bit of accountability and defining it properly and incentivizing people in terms of not just how they're rewarded or compensated, but how they must come together and at what frequency, which is
yeah.
Project Charter is such an important document of being able to define it depending on the size of the project. But that's such a valuable underutilized or under thought out governance piece.
Well, the best time, in my view, that we had was we firstly really influenced that that all these parties come together, and then we would be hired to provide training for the team. So the owner would hire us, the GC, the architects and engineers, and then the electrical sub, the mechanical sub. So all of these groups would come together. And they may or may not actually follow the whole project through. But it allowed that they could decide, and the team could decide whether they were the best fit or not. And if they weren't, then they brought someone else in and so on. But it was definitely shared input, shared risk and reward. And we set targets to bring the project in 10 to 15% under the budget and ahead of schedule. And so then the results of that win were shared with everybody. So the incentives were huge back in the day.
How long ago was that? Because that's to
Not that long ago.
under
We're
budgeting and
still
ahead of
doing
schedule is unheard of. Those are isolated, and
it only works when everyone works together. So
there's
we've been doing this training since, oh shit, I'd have to go back and check, a number of years. It
okay.
was easier. We put on conferences too, so there was lots more visibility when you have a conference and you can invite everybody to attend. I actually spent a bit of time working with the Yukon government, quite frankly,
Okay.
and it was also supported by the Construction Association in the Yukon. So they came together. It was a beautiful thing. And we made sure that they came to the conference. We set up training for them. And it was a combined training effort with folks that worked in government, with contractors and so on. So it was good times. I should check back to see if they're still implementing, but
That's interesting because a lot of the stories or anecdotes I'm hearing is about the old guard that was capable of playing together better, and now it's more insular, isolated.
well, it's a mindset. And the whole notion of how you actually go, like how an owner approaches the marketplace is key because design, bid, build just perpetuates this old story of, throat cutting and nobody wins. So there are different project structures. Like I've been having chats with the P3 gang that works in that particular structure. I've been involved in two P3 structures, project
I
structures.
have as well, yeah, the DBFOM.
Yeah. Yeah, well there's pluses and minuses for every one, for sure. But it doesn't matter. You can apply lean to all of these, excepting design, bid, build, because it's too linear. There's no, I mean, the contractor can be lean,
Yeah,
but not really because it's got to involve
separate.
everybody. Yeah. So
Yeah, interesting.
anyway, I would love to see your stuff, and I'll share with you anything that you're interested in too. But I'm hoping to connect, as I mentioned, with this author. Um, Hopefully next week. But I do want to introduce her to you and Peter because I think there's synergy there. And I think that, well, you know what? I'm a collaborator. So I think the more
Yeah,
folks choose different ways to work together, the more gets done.
that's it, and that's part of this. Normally, I'm focused on very specific things and have been neglecting in terms of just talking up this session, but I keep it weekly to just have any for people to know it's here and just to
Yeah.
come and for us to talk about any topic that needs to be addressed. And housing is one of the most important issues we have. So if there's a way that we can put our heads together and push for progress, then that's amazing.
Well, it's also business structures and you and Peter focus on that for bit. And I like that. We need different business structures because we've been monopolized. And I think
Yes,
we need to have different avenues. And I think there's connection there because these things are all connected. You can't just take one approach. There has to be new ways of doing business. And I think that getting more folks in the room with you and Peter to talk about what that could look like in any particular field would be a useful thing. So
I agree. And Peter's better versed at talking at that. So I would defer everything
I
to.
do have a question for Peter because I've been trying to understand the context. He's spoken a fair bit about blockchain,
Okay.
and I'm not certain in the context that he is promoting that. or why, but I'm curious, so I'd be interested to find that out. So
Interesting. What was the Yeah, okay. I don't remember what discussion was around
I probably read it on one or two of his LinkedIn posts.
okay. Oh, right. Yes, I do remember. Yeah. Okay, well, I'll let him know, or well, you can let him know as well. You should let him know because then we can
Yes.
more meaningfully.
Well, I've got like a shitload of emails. I'm so far behind. I have to catch up, and there's a few things I want to talk to you guys about, but I have to scoot to another meeting. So
Yeah,
I
great chat
really
as always.
enjoy. I keep doing this because I think it's important. I'm certainly enjoying it. I mean, we only met on, through LinkedIn on this, and that's critical. That's
Mm.
how good things get done when smart people come together. So
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Okay, and I will. And yeah, I always enjoy our chat. So thanks, Kathleen, and I'll see you next week.
yeah, okay, take care. Gotta go.
Bye.
Bye.